at a production site. Maaike was trained as a pharmacist in the Netherlands. She's Dutch, but now works in France for Sanofi. She had a small number of years in a public pharmacy, but then moved to the pharmaceutical industry, had different roles, but mainly on quality management of good manufacturing practices and good distribution practices. She is now the data integrity officer at a manufacturing site of Sanofi for their biologicals near Paris. Maaike, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for a nice introduction. Let me share my presentation. So thank you very much for the invitation for today. And it's a pleasure to speak to you about the opportunities that exist in the area of quality assurance. So indeed, I will focus on opportunities that are there within a manufacturing site. So indeed, as Josie said, currently I work at Sanofi, so one of the main players within the pharmaceutical industry. And in our case, we have 4 big business units: specialty care, general medicine, fact science, and consumer healthcare. And if you think about quality management of these activities, we have a chief quality officer that's responsible for the entire quality oversight of all of our activities. And he has a global quality group that defines all the requirements on high level. And then for each of these business units, you have smaller quality organizations that have to make sure that all regulations are translated into their business unit activities. And so in my case, I'm in the specialty care business unit, for which we have about 10 manufacturing sites in Europe and in the United States, with a lot of focus on oncology and also rare diseases. So typically biological products where you can think of. So this is a small picture of what my site is looking like. On the right, you will see a relatively new plant from 2010, in which we have 2 big production trains. And then on the left, you can see it's slightly older, and there we make our small molecules for also for oncology. And in between, there's a lot of utilities. You see a lot of pipes all going. So it's a big campus where about 500 people are active. So what does the life cycle of a medicinal product look like? I think you already saw a little bit about this in previous presentations. So the typical development of a medicinal product is about 10 years. So it starts with really the research and development part, and then we enter in clinical phases, which you see in the middle, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, in which the product is tested first on small groups of healthy patients, and then up to big groups of patients with the I don't find a word. This big group of patients to test if the medicinal product is efficacious and well dosed and really giving the benefits that we would need to bring the benefits to the patient. And then we go into a registration phase to bring the product to the market. The product will be launched and commercialized, and then you enter in a life cycle management. So in case of my activities on the manufacturing side, we are typically busy as of phase 3. So we have new products coming in, and all the products for which we keep manufacturing and in which we are clearly in the commercialization phase and in life cycle management. So in terms of quality oversight, for each of these steps, you will need a good implementation of regulations that are coming from typically FDA for the American market, or coming from Ouderlex, the regulations from the EMA, the European Medicines Agency. And in our role in quality assurance, we have to make sure that all these regulations are translated into our daily operations to make sure that for all activities on the site, we deliver a product that is in which the patients can fully have trust. And with quality by design, we will have to make sure that the product is pure, safe, efficacy, and has the right quality. And so in particular in manufacturing, that also means that products need to be manufactured, stored, and packed in accordance with these good manufacturing practices defined in the regulations I just mentioned. So how does that translate in daily activities? Typically, what do you see on the manufacturing side? The overall quality documentation, I would say, is defined in a group that's called pharmaceutical quality systems. And later on, I will go into the detail to explain what this group is doing. Of course, you have a lot of personnel in which you can think of how are they trained, how should they behave, what is the quality culture, and how can you make sure that everyone is completely aware of these regulations and what is needed to get the product manufactured in the right ways. You can think about premises and equipment. You have to make sure that your facilities are up to standard, that they're validated, that your equipment is doing what it's supposed to do. If you have a change management, for example, you need to change a parameter, you need to make sure that everything is correctly documented and that your product remains under control. Production, of course, is the key activity because we aim to deliver a product in the end, and all the other activities are supporting the production to get the product out of the door, I would say. And so a big part of that control is done by a department called quality control that are responsible for all the testing of the products. That can be during production, as in product controls, or after, typically for release controls before the product will be released for the market. And then you can think about transferable activities, typically outsourced activities. Some tests we do not perform in-house, but we outsource them to other parties. It can also be certain manufacturing steps that you can outsource to specific companies with specific knowledge, for example. So also there, you need to have quality oversight to make sure that your outsourced partner is also applying the regulations as we have to apply them. Another aspect important are about complaints and product recall. At any time, you have to be able to recall your product if any deficiency is detected. And if there are complaints, so here in the example, you see tablets that are split. If a complaint is coming in from a patient, you also need to have a mechanism in place to react to these complaints and handle them properly. So for all of these activities, documentation is also a key aspect. Any activity that we do has to be documented. So there we also have a strong quality oversight to make sure that all regulations get translated into documentation, and how does the documentation help the operators, the technicians, the people in quality control, etc., to get the product and activities delivered in the right way. Then maybe as final aspect, self-inspection is really key, as regulations keep changing and we have to make sure that the texts predetermined are really implemented correctly on site. We have a mechanism that's called self-inspection. So that can be people from quality, but it can also be other departments where we inspect a certain department within the manufacturing site and we assess, do they perform activities according to what has been documented, and is the documentation according to the most recent guidelines. And with that, we identify opportunities for improvement and sometimes gaps, and we help in that way driving the continuous improvement to make us better and get the most compliance level possible. And then finally, a small focus on key documents. So typically the site master file, which is a big regulatory document, which describes all aspects on how do we produce a medicinal product, in what building, in what equipment is used, what are the critical parameters for the product, everything that is key to be able to produce the medicinal product in a consistent way is captured in the site master file. And that gives important information to health authorities to understand how do we produce and under what conditions. And for almost all activities, we apply quality risk management. So that for each activity, we think what is the risk and what can we do to mitigate this risk as much as possible. And if there's any remaining risk, residual risk, can we accept it? Or do we have to completely think about another process so that the risks are acceptable to deliver a good product?
Maaike, just a reminder, you have 5 minutes left.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, so linked to all these activities that we just saw, the typical quality organization is built around quality systems, a regulatory site, an operational quality assurance, biocompliance, and also general compliance. So what are these functions doing? Quality systems is typically responsible for documentation management. What I said about outsourced management, they have to look at compliant procedures around suppliers, around third parties. They develop procedures around deviation, change control, complaint system, and they perform site quality reviews. Then the regulatory department is responsible to edit the site master file I just talked about, and to complete submission files for the health authorities, also with all specifics about the products that are submitted to the health authorities. Then operational QA is a quality department directly related to the operations like production, supply chain, quality control, and they have a direct oversight of the operations, and they're typically involved in release of the product to make sure that when we will release a product, it is compliant with all aspects identified upfront. And they also have a strong role in deviation management. If during manufacturing any discrepancy arrives, we have to assess what happened, what is the root cause, and what do we have to do about it? Can we still release the batch, yes or no? Or do we have to scrap part of the batch? And what are corrective actions that we have to introduce to avoid the same type of deviation in the future? Then two other disciplines are biocompliance. So typically often we work in clean rooms in a very clean environment to make sure that there's no contamination that will be entered in the product, because then of course it will be a very high risk for the patients that will receive the documentation, the medicinal product. And so this team is in particular responsible to deploy a strategy on how to prevent any contamination risks. And finally, the compliance group, they are driving inspection readiness so that at all times we are ready to host an inspection from a health authority, explain our practices, and explain our ways of working, and confirm that we work according to the regulations set by these health authorities. So in terms of career development, so typically what kind of education can be a good entry to enter in quality assurance? You can typically think about studies of engineering, life sciences. There are a lot of pharmacists in the quality assurance, also biologists. There are specific masters in quality assurance and quality management. And what kind of skills do we look for? So care for the patient is really important, because in the end, what we want to achieve is deliver good quality products that end up in our patients, and that so that is really the key aspect. And of course, with quality assurance, you have to be rigorous, a general interest in all kinds of topics around the manufacturing, and you need good critical thinking skills. You also need to be good in influencing and communication, because sometimes you have to take hard decisions on what do you accept, what do you not accept. So the communication part is also very important. Then finally, I wanted to show you how did it work out for me. So as Josie said, I'm a pharmacist, and I started a few years in a public pharmacy. Then I joined the pharmaceutical industry in a traineeship to discover what kind of possibilities are there within the industry. And that was really great, because you can see there are many opportunities, and you can go from one role to another. So after this traineeship, I started as a manufacturing expert, and then I had different roles in quality. So I think if you think about development of your career at a long term, it's really great, because you stay close to manufacturing, but there are all kinds of disciplines around, like the quality compliance part, the quality system part. Currently, I work on data integrity. So with the same background and your continuous development and continuous training, you have many opportunities to keep developing yourself and see other aspects of the business. That was it for today. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, but we'll have to keep the questions after the next speaker. So stay with us, please. Thank you very much, Maaike.
Perfect.
So let's move on then to the last speaker on operational aspects of manufacturing and the possibilities there. That last speaker will be Tom Janssens. He is